There is a vegetable sitting in grocery stores right now that most people have no idea they could be growing at home in containers they probably already own. Not a fancy raised bed, not an expensive grow bag, not some specialized planter that costs $40 and ships from overseas. Just an old plastic paint bucket, the kind that has been sitting in your garage since the last time you painted a room and has been collecting dust ever since. Potatoes have this reputation for needing space. People picture long rows stretched across a massive garden plot, hilled up with mounded soil, taking up half the backyard. And yes, that is one way to grow them, but it is not the only way. And for a lot of people in apartments, people with small yards, people who just do not have the ground space, container growing is not just a workaround. It is actually a genuinely excellent method with some real advantages over in-ground growing that most gardeners never consider. The paint bucket method specifically has been quietly used by homesteaders, small-scale growers, and backyard gardeners for decades. It works. It is low cost. It is manageable. And once you understand the logic behind why it works, the whole process makes complete sense from start to finish. So, let us go through everything. How to set up your buckets, what soil to use, how to plant, how to manage the growth, and what to expect when harvest time comes. By the end of this, you will have everything you need to grow a genuinely productive potato crop out of containers most people would throw away. Let's start with the bucket itself, because this is where a lot of beginners either overthink it or do not think about it enough. A standard 5-gallon plastic paint bucket is your target. 5 gallons is the minimum you want to work with for potatoes. You can go larger. A 10-gallon bucket gives you even more room and generally more yield, but 5 gallons is where the economics really make sense. You're not spending money on a container. You're repurposing something that already exists. Now, paint buckets specifically come with a detail you need to pay attention to, which is the material they are made from. Most standard household paint buckets are made from HDPE, high-density polyethylene. You will see the recycling symbol on the bottom with the number 2 inside it. HDPE is considered food safe and is widely used for food storage containers, water jugs, and agricultural applications. This is what you want if your bucket does not have that marking, or if it previously held something other than latex paint, such as solvents, chemicals, or oil-based products. Do not use it for food growing. The residue from those materials can leach into your soil and eventually into your food. Latex paint buckets that have been rinsed out are generally fine. When in doubt, a brand new 5-gallon bucket from any hardware store costs around $4 or $5 and removes all uncertainty. The next thing you absolutely must do before anything else goes into that bucket is drainage. Potatoes sitting in waterlogged soil will rot. It is not a possibility. It is a certainty. A sealed bucket with no drainage is essentially a water trap. You need to drill holes in the bottom. Not one hole, several holes. A good rule of thumb is 5 to 8 holes across the base of the bucket, each about ½ an inch in diameter. If you have a drill, this takes about 60 seconds. If you do not have a drill, a hammer and a large nail will work. You can also add a few holes around the lower sides of the bucket, an inch or 2 up from the base, for additional drainage insurance. This step is non-negotiable. Get the drainage right before you do anything else. Now let's talk about soil, because this is the single biggest factor in whether your bucket potatoes thrive or struggle. Garden soil dug straight from the ground is not what you want here. It compacts badly inside a container. Over time, it becomes dense, heavy, and poorly aerated, and potato roots and tubers need loose, friable soil to expand into. Compacted soil physically restricts tuber development. You end up with small, misshapen potatoes because they literally could not push through the growing medium. What you want is a mix that stays loose and drains well, while still holding enough moisture and nutrition to feed the plant through its whole growing cycle. A reliable base mix is 2 parts good quality potting mix to 1 part perlite or coarse horticultural sand. The potting mix gives you the organic matter and nutrient base. The perlite or sand keeps it aerated and prevents compaction. Some growers also add a third component, aged compost, at roughly 1 part, which gives the mix an additional nutritional boost and improves moisture retention without compromising drainage. What you want to avoid is anything that is marketed as moisture-retaining or water-locking potting mix. Those formulas are designed for flowers and ornamentals that want consistent moisture. Potatoes need good drainage and periods of relative dryness between waterings. A waterlogged potato environment is an invitation for fungal diseases like blight and tuber rot that can destroy your crop. Before you fill the bucket, a small layer, about 1 inch, of gravel or broken pottery pieces at the very bottom can further protect your drainage holes from getting blocked by soil. It is a minor addition, but it keeps things flowing correctly over time. Now, let's get into the seed potatoes themselves, because what you plant matters enormously. First, do not plant grocery store potatoes. This is a tempting shortcut, and it almost always leads to frustration. Commercial potatoes are routinely treated with a sprouting inhibitor, so they stay shelf-stable longer. Even if they look like they want to sprout, many of them are chemically suppressed and will either fail to grow or produce very weakly. Beyond that, commercially grown potatoes are not certified disease-free. They can carry soil-borne pathogens that you introduce directly into your growing medium and potentially spread to other containers or garden areas. What you want are certified seed potatoes from a garden center, a nursery, or a reputable online supplier. Certified seed potatoes are grown specifically for planting, are inspected for disease, and are not treated with sprouting inhibitors. They are also selected for known variety characteristics, yield, flavor, skin type, and days to maturity, so you actually know what you are going to get. For bucket growing, variety selection matters more than most beginners realize. Large, sprawling, late-season varieties that take 110 to 120 days to mature are not ideal for a 5-gallon container situation. What you want are early to mid-season varieties, sometimes labeled as first early or second early, that mature in 70 to 90 days and tend to produce rounder, more compact tubers that fit comfortably in the space a bucket provides. Good options include Yukon Gold, which is a reliable, widely available variety with excellent flavor. Red Norland and Caribe are both early producers that do well in containers. Fingerling varieties are also fantastic for buckets because their tubers are naturally small and slender, and they pack in surprisingly well. Once you have your seed potatoes, the next step most experienced growers recommend is chitting, which is simply the process of pre-sprouting your seed potatoes before planting. You take your seed potatoes and place them in a cool, bright location, not in direct hot sunlight, but in good ambient light, with the end that has the most eyes facing upward. Over the course of 2 to 4 weeks, short, stubby green sprouts will emerge from those eyes. These are called chits. Chitting gives your potato a head start. The sprouted potato hits the soil already primed to grow, rather than spending the first few weeks in the ground waking up. In a container system where your growing season may be compressed, that head start can translate to noticeably earlier and heavier yields. Your seed potatoes do not need to be planted whole. Any seed potato larger than a golf ball can be cut into pieces, as long as each piece has at least 2 healthy eyes on it. If you cut them, leave the cut pieces out in a dry, airy spot for 24 to 48 hours before planting. This allows the cut surface to callus over, which dramatically reduces the risk of the cut end rotting in the soil before it has a chance to establish. Now everything is ready. Your bucket is drilled and layered. Your soil mix is prepared. Your seed potatoes are chitted and cut if needed. In part 2, we go into exactly how to plant them, how to manage the plant as it grows, how the hilling process works inside a bucket, and how to know precisely when your potatoes are ready to harvest. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever tried growing potatoes in containers before, or is this your first time giving it a shot? Tell me where you're growing from too. I'd love to see how far this reaches. Everything is ready, the bucket is prepared, the soil mix is right, the seed potatoes are chitted and calloused. Now let's put it all together and take it through to harvest. Planting is straightforward. Fill your bucket with about 4 to 6 inches of your prepared soil mix at the bottom. Place 2 seed potato pieces into the bucket, no more than 2 for a standard 5-gallon bucket, 1 if your seed potatoes are on the larger side. Give them room. Crowding 2 large pieces into a small container just means they compete with each other the entire season and both suffer for it. Place them cut side down, eyes facing up, and cover them with another 4 inches of soil. That's your starting point. You're not filling the bucket all the way yet, and that gap at the top is intentional. As the plant grows and the stems reach about 6 to 8 inches above the soil surface, you add more soil mix around the stems, burying them and leaving only the top few inches of foliage exposed. This is the hilling process, adapted for container growing, and it is the single most important technique in bucket potato production. Every buried section of stem has the potential to develop new tubers along its length. The more stem you bury over the course of the growing season, the more tubers you get. You repeat this process every time the plant grows another 6 to 8 inches above the soil line until the bucket is filled to within a couple of inches of the rim. After that, you let the plant grow freely. Watering needs to be consistent but never excessive. Check the soil by pushing your finger 2 inches down. If it feels dry at that depth, water thoroughly until it runs freely from the drainage holes. If it still feels moist, leave it alone. Overwatering is the fastest way to lose a bucket potato crop to rot. During hot weather, you may be watering every day. During cooler periods, every 2 to 3 days is more typical. Feeding matters too. Potatoes are heavy feeders. A balanced fertilizer every 2 to 3 weeks through the early and middle growth stages keeps the plant productive. Once the plant flowers, switch to a low nitrogen feed that emphasizes phosphorus and potassium, which supports tuber development rather than leaf growth. Harvest timing has 2 signals. The first is when the plant flowers. At that point, small new potatoes are already forming, and you can carefully reach into the soil and pull a few without disturbing the main plant. The second and final signal is when the foliage yellows and dies back completely. That is the plant telling you it is finished. Stop watering, wait 1 more week to let the skin set firm, then tip the entire bucket out onto a tarp and pull your potatoes from the soil. That moment, tipping the bucket and watching potatoes tumble out, never gets old no matter how many times you do it. Comment below and tell me which variety you're planning to try first. I read every single one.